22 years and not even a proper goodbye. I'm Marcus Coleman, 54 years old, Senior Transport Specialist at Blue Ridge Continental Shipping based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Been with them since they operated just 4 vehicles and a modest warehouse. Now they maintain 35 rigs, partnerships with some of the largest distributors across the Southeast, and a new operations director who couldn't recognize dedication if it delivered his breakfast when Blue Ridge was acquired by some venture capital firm last autumn. I anticipated adjustments were inevitable, just never imagined they'd begin with me. The new director, Alicia Bennett, had an MBA from some prestigious university and designer heels that had never stepped on a loading dock. She'd been scrutinizing my compensation package for weeks, making remarks about legacy personnel costs during budget meetings. That Tuesday, I'd returned from a 4-day delivery route to Atlanta precisely on schedule, as usual. When Alicia summoned me to her immaculate office, the severance documents were already prepared. My replacement, a 20-something with barely 6 months of commercial driving experience, was waiting in the corridor. "We need to optimize operational expenses," Alicia explained, eyes fixed on her computer screen instead of my face. "Nothing personal, purely financial considerations. Your compensation is nearly twice what we can offer an entry-level driver." I simply nodded. Didn't protest. Didn't mention that Riverside Distributors had been shipping exclusively with us for over a decade because I helped their warehouse manager move his grandmother into hospice care when no one else would. Didn't bring up that Eastern Supply had renewed their contract for consecutive times because I consistently accommodated their emergency deliveries, even during major holidays. 22 years of spotless safety records, never missed a delivery window, knew every client by name. "Severance package is 3 weeks," Alicia continued, sliding the paperwork across her glass desktop. "Company standard." I signed without reviewing, surrendered my access card, my vehicle keys, and my company phone, and expressed appreciation for the employment opportunity. In the parking area, I remained in my pickup for nearly 90 minutes, not feeling anger, just contemplating the relationships I'd cultivated with customers across 7 states over the years. About the holiday cards I received from shipping coordinators throughout the region, about how Alicia couldn't comprehend that in this industry, products move through relationships as much as diesel fuel. My phone chimed. Message from James Riverside himself. "Just heard the news. Those corporate fools called me." Then another from Patricia at Eastern Supply. "Is this rumor about your departure accurate? Let's discuss before you make any decisions." By the time I exited Blue Ridge's compound, 5 additional messages had arrived. I didn't immediately respond. Just drove home and settled on my deck watching twilight paint the Carolina sky in shades of purple. They'd terminated a driver, but lost something considerably more valuable. I joined Blue Ridge when it was simply Old Man Bennett and his daughter trying to establish something worthwhile. Bennett taught me everything essential: navigating mountain highways during ice storms, building client rapport, resolving roadside complications without requesting backup. "The shipping business isn't about trucks," he'd often remind me. "It's about credibility." For 22 years, I'd cultivated that credibility one delivery at a time. When the massive snowstorm paralyzed Raleigh in 2018, I was the one who transported critical medical supplies to 4 hospitals when conventional routes became impassable. I discovered alternative pathways when Riverside Distributors required an urgent shipment of packaging materials after their warehouse sprinkler system malfunctioned. I drove 33 hours straight to make it happen. My wife, Corinne, understood the situation. Sometimes I'd be absent for nearly a week, but I always returned with stories. Our children grew up with me traveling half the time, but they never questioned that I'd be present for significant milestones. Missed some soccer tournaments? Certainly, but never a graduation or birthday celebration. When Bennett transferred ownership 7 years ago, changes began gradually, initially subtle. New protocols, additional documentation requirements, decreased flexibility. The subsequent management retained me because clients specifically requested me by name. "We know it'll arrive safely with Marcus driving," they'd say with confidence. Alicia appeared 8 months ago, recruited from some corporate logistics operation in Philadelphia. Started discussing efficiency algorithms and driver rotation schedules. She questioned why we permitted certain clients to establish their own delivery timeframes. Riverside isn't even our highest volume account, she'd argue during planning sessions. No, I'd clarify patiently. But they are our most steadfast. They've partnered with us since the beginning. She'd respond with that practiced corporate smile. Customer loyalty doesn't register on financial statements. I observed the foundation cracking. Started hearing whispers about rate increases for our longest-standing clients. Watched how Alicia recruited drivers based on salary requirements rather than experience or reliability. Noticed her reducing expenditures on preventative maintenance. For weeks earlier, I'd confronted her after she reprimanded Sarah, one of our most meticulous mechanics, for wasting resources on preemptive maintenance procedures. "You're going to lose valuable personnel?" I cautioned her. Alicia laughed dismissively. "Everyone can be substituted, Marcus. That's business fundamentals." I didn't debate further, just returned to my principles. Maintaining communication with clients, completing my deliveries, keeping operations flowing while the infrastructure deteriorated beneath us. Little did I realize, I'd be the first casualty of their optimization strategy. After contemplating on my deck for an hour, I finally reviewed those messages. James Riverside wanted to meet for breakfast tomorrow. Patricia from Eastern Supply inquired about my future employment plans. Samuel at Piedmont Manufacturing simply sent a series of outraged emoji symbols, followed by "call me immediately." I entered my home, brewed fresh coffee, and settled at the kitchen table. Corinne was working late at the veterinary clinic. The house felt unnaturally silent. I retrieved my logbooks, 22 years of delivery routes, customer relationships. Blue Ridge didn't possess ownership of those. They dismissed the driver but overlooked the connections I'd established. My phone rang. Bennett himself. Must have heard through industry channels. "Absolute disgrace what they're doing to my company," he said, voice rough with age and indignation. "I never should have relinquished control." "You made necessary choices," I replied. "Charlotte's medical expenses were substantial." "Even so," he interrupted, "I built that organization on relationships, not spreadsheets. These newcomers don't comprehend our industry." After our conversation ended, I examined my hands, weathered from decades of steering wheels, loading pallets, problem solving. 22 years vanished with a single signature. The following morning, I met James Riverside at Lakeside Diner. He dispensed with pleasantries. "I've heard what happened," he stated, sliding into the booth. "Complete short-sightedness. You've personally rescued our operations on more occasions than I can enumerate." "Simply performing my responsibilities," I said modestly. "No." James shook his head emphatically. "You consistently exceeded expectations. Remember when our inventory system crashed during the holiday rush? You rearranged your entire schedule to accommodate our emergency shipments." I shrugged. "Deliveries don't pause for technical difficulties." James leaned forward. "We maintain a contract with Blue Ridge, but it includes a 60-day termination provision. Which company are you joining next? Because that's where our business will follow." I hadn't considered my subsequent steps yet, but James's words planted possibilities. By mid-afternoon, I'd spoken with Patricia from Eastern Supply, who expressed identical sentiments. By evening, 4 additional clients had contacted me with similar messages. While driving home, I passed Blue Ridge's facility, observed my former truck already reassigned to that novice driver. Through the windows, I could see Alicia gesturing at presentation slides during a meeting. That's when comprehension struck me. Alicia viewed drivers as interchangeable components, but clients recognized us as trusted partners. For 22 years, I'd represented Blue Ridge to most of our significant accounts. I wasn't merely a driver. I was their reliable connection to the company. I pulled into my driveway, thought racing, and contacted my colleague Vincent, who departed Blue Ridge last summer for a competitor. "What would be required?" I asked. "To establish our own shipping operation." Vincent paused momentarily. "Are you genuinely considering this, Marcus?" "Never been more serious about anything." "You'd need capital, operating authority, insurance coverage." He began listing requirements. "And clients," I added confidently. That evening, Corinne discovered me at the kitchen table, surrounded by notes and calculations. "What's all this about?" she inquired. "I believe," I said deliberately, "I'm founding a shipping company." 5 days after my termination, I returned to Blue Ridge's premises, not seeking reinstatement. I'd moved beyond that, but to retrieve personal belongings from my locker and connect with several drivers I'd mentored through the years. Alicia spotted me in the break room conversing with Taylor and Miguel, two drivers who developed under my guidance. Her expression darkened as she approached. "Marcus, this is private property," she stated firmly. "You cannot simply enter and disrupt operations." "Just collecting my possessions," I replied, displaying my travel mug and family photographs from my locker, and saying farewell to colleagues. Alicia crossed her arms defensively. "I've received reports you've been communicating with our clients." So that explained her concern. Information circulates rapidly in the shipping industry. "They contacted me," I clarified, inquiring why I wasn't managing their deliveries anymore. "Cease immediately," Alicia demanded. "Those are Blue Ridge accounts. Interfering with our client relationships could constitute tortious interference with established business contracts." She pronounced each word as though rehearsed with legal counsel. Perhaps she had. "Cannot control who reaches out to me," I responded evenly, "or what decisions they make regarding their shipping requirements." Alicia stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Listen carefully, Marcus. You signed non-competition and non-solicitation agreements when joining Blue Ridge. If you attempt to divert our clients, we'll overwhelm you with legal expenses." I hadn't anticipated this confrontation. Couldn't afford prolonged litigation. 22 years of loyalty, and now they threatened legal action for accepting telephone calls. "Verify those agreements," I suggested, recalling something significant. "They expired after 15 years. Bennett ensured that provision. Alicia's complexion reddened. She clearly hadn't researched thoroughly. Regardless, she recovered quickly. "Consider this your solitary warning. Stay away from our clients." I nodded, gathered my belongings, and departed. In the parking area, Taylor and Miguel caught up with me. "She's dismantling this organization," Taylor muttered. "Reducing maintenance budgets, pressuring drivers to exceed service hour regulations. 5 employees resigned last week," Miguel added. "Replace them with inexperienced drivers accepting minimal compensation." I'd suspected these developments, but confirmation intensified my concern, not merely regarding business implications, but safety considerations. Poorly maintained vehicles and exhausted drivers created hazardous conditions. "Exercise caution," was my only response. At home, I contacted Bennett to confirm my recollection about those agreements. He verified exactly what I remembered. The non-competition and non-solicitation clauses had indeed expired years previously. "I never believed in permanently restricting people's opportunities," he explained. "Successful business develops through choice, not coercion." The following day, I received certified correspondence from Blue Ridge's attorneys nonetheless, threatening litigation if I continued soliciting their clients. Pure intimidation tactics. They possessed no legitimate case, but hoped I'd lack knowledge or resources to challenge them. That same afternoon, James Riverside called. "Blue Ridge suddenly attempted to increase our rates by 17% without explanation," he fumed. "When I mentioned your name, their account manager became visibly uncomfortable." One by one, similar reports arrived. Blue Ridge was desperately trying to secure clients using aggressive measures and abrupt rate adjustments. Classic desperation strategies. That evening, Vincent visited with takeout and beverages. We sat on my covered patio developing a comprehensive business strategy. He'd already gathered information on insurance requirements, licensing procedures, and startup expenses. The figures were substantial but not insurmountable, especially if we began with just 2 or 3 vehicles. "We'd need guaranteed contracts initially," Vincent noted, sipping his drink. I reviewed my phone, which had been continuously receiving client messages throughout the day. I don't anticipate that being problematic. 9 days later, I was arranging furniture in a modest office I'd leased in a commercial complex on Charlotte's East Side. Vincent had accessed his retirement savings. I'd utilized personal reserves, and together we'd secured financing for 3 vehicles. Seemed modest compared to Blue Ridge's fleet, but represented a beginning. We'd completed documentation establishing Coleman and Vincent Transport LLC and applied for Department of Transportation Authority. Secured appropriate insurance coverage. Expensive, but our exemplary driving histories provided favorable terms. Even located a well-maintained pre-owned vehicle available the following week. What I hadn't expected was the call from Margaret, Blue Ridge's veteran dispatch coordinator. "Marcus, can you speak privately?" Her voice was hushed, suggesting she was concealed in a storage closet or restroom. "Always available, Margaret. What's occurring?" "Conditions are deteriorating rapidly," she revealed. "After your departure, Alicia introduced some efficiency consultant who's been analyzing all contracts, identifying opportunities to extract additional revenue from everyone." She paused, and I heard papers rustling. That's not even the worst development. They're planning to completely close Charlotte operations within 7 months, relocating everything to Jacksonville, where they've negotiated some tax incentive arrangement. Everyone here faces termination. They simply haven't been informed yet. The revelation impacted me physically. Blue Ridge had been a Charlotte institution for generations. Nearly 50 families depended on those positions. "How certain are you?" I questioned. "Absolutely confident. I personally viewed the documentation while filing records. Alicia carelessly left them visible on her workstation. They've already initiated warehouse space negotiations in Jacksonville." After she disconnected, I remained at my barren desk, contemplating the wall. This situation transcended my personal circumstances. It affected dozens who would be blindsided several months from now. Vincent arrived with refreshments, enthusiastic about the used Freightliner he'd discovered at competitive pricing. He halted when observing my expression. "What happened?" I related Margaret's information. His demeanor hardened progressively as I spoke. "So all this rhetoric about efficiency and streamlining was merely misdirection," he concluded. "They intended to eliminate everyone regardless." "Appears that way." Vincent settled into a chair, refreshments forgotten. "We need expanded planning, Marcus." "What precisely do you mean?" "If they're discontinuing operations in 7 months regardless, we should prepare to incorporate as much of that business as possible. Not individually, but comprehensively." His assessment was accurate. This wasn't about retribution against Alicia or even preserving my career trajectory. It concerned safeguarding what Bennett had established, the relationships, the trust, the employment opportunities. We dedicated the remainder of that day revising our business strategy, contacted our banking representative regarding financing for additional vehicles, and researched warehouse facilities that could function as a modest terminal. By evening, we had outlined something considerably more ambitious than our original 3-vehicle operation. The following morning, I arranged to meet Bennett for lunch. I presented everything Margaret had revealed and what Vincent and I were developing. The challenges confronting us. The elderly gentleman listened attentively, hands clasped before him. When I concluded, he nodded deliberately. "What financial resources do you require?" he inquired directly. "For initial investment. I've accumulated some retirement savings. Was reserving it for a beachfront property, but this seems significantly more important." I hadn't anticipated this offer. "We couldn't possibly ask you to." "You're not asking," Bennett interrupted firmly. "I'm volunteering. Most of those people at Blue Ridge, I personally hired them. Known their families for decades. I refuse to stand idle while corporate raiders scatter them to uncertainty." He produced his checkbook immediately in the restaurant. "Let's construct something properly this time," he stated. "Something enduring." Over subsequent weeks, Coleman, Vincent, and Bennett Transport materialized with remarkable momentum. Bennett's investment, combined with our resources and commercial financing, provided sufficient capital to lease 6 vehicles, secure a modest terminal with warehouse facilities, and recruit essential personnel. We prioritized fundamentals. Margaret resigned from Blue Ridge and joined us as dispatch coordinator. 3 experienced mechanics followed, frustrated with Blue Ridge's maintenance reductions. We hired 7 drivers, all veterans with outstanding safety records, who had either already departed Blue Ridge or planned to leave. The vehicles arrived, 4 Freightliners and 2 Kenworths. Nothing extravagant, but reliable, dependable equipment. We painted them forest green with silver accents, our new company emblem prominently displayed. Each morning, arriving at our modest terminal before sunrise, I experienced profound satisfaction seeing those trucks prepared for departure. Meanwhile, Blue Ridge was deteriorating rapidly. Following my exit, for significant clients had withdrawn their business, not to us initially, but to competitors. They'd cited service concerns, but were actually waiting to evaluate whether our new venture could address their requirements. Rumors of the Jacksonville relocation had leaked throughout the industry. Morale at Blue Ridge had collapsed completely. Drivers were departing weekly, delivery schedules were consistently missed. Alicia operated in perpetual crisis management, reducing rates desperately to retain clients while cutting expenses everywhere possible. We proceeded methodically, establishing our infrastructure before accepting excessive business. Bennett insisted on implementing proper standards, comprehensive training, thorough maintenance protocols, equitable compensation structures. Profitability follows quality and reliability, he repeatedly emphasized. By the fourth week, we were prepared to approach clients directly. I began with Riverside Distributors, my longest professional relationship. James Riverside received me in his office, examined our rate proposals, insurance documentation, and driver qualifications. Asked challenging questions regarding capacity and contingency planning. "This appears thoroughly professional, Marcus," he acknowledged finally. "However, Blue Ridge just reduced their rates substantially below yours. They're desperate to retain our business. They cannot sustain those rates indefinitely," I responded, "and they cannot match our service standards. Additionally, there's something you should understand." I informed him about the Jacksonville relocation plans. James's expression darkened. "So all their assurances about local service response times will become impossible once they relocate operations." James nodded thoughtfully. "We'll need to implement this transition cautiously. Cannot risk supply chain disruptions during our peak season. We've developed strategies specifically addressing that concern," I assured him, outlining our gradual implementation approach. By the meeting's conclusion, we had established a preliminary agreement. Riverside Distributors would transfer 25% of their shipping requirements to us immediately, with remaining volumes transitioning over 90 days. Similar discussions occurred with Eastern Supply, Piedmont Manufacturing, and 7 additional major clients. Not all committed immediately, but most began redirecting portions of their business toward our operation. We weren't exclusively acquiring clients. We were attracting quality personnel as well. Weekly, another Blue Ridge employee would approach us seeking employment opportunities. We couldn't accommodate everyone, but we selected the most qualified, experienced dispatchers, skilled mechanics, and reliable drivers. Then came the pivotal moment confirming we were progressing appropriately. Taylor, the driver I'd mentored who remained at Blue Ridge, called one evening. "Marcus, this is unbelievable. Alicia just announced they lost the Mountain View construction account." Mountain View represented Blue Ridge's largest customer relationship, approximately 35% of their overall business. What exactly happened? Apparently, they discovered the Jacksonville relocation plans through connections at Eastern Supply. They've already contracted with another provider. I asked the obvious question: which company secured their business? Taylor laughed. "That's the most satisfying aspect. Not your operation. They selected regional transport. Alicia has been frantically claiming you somehow orchestrated their departure, but everyone recognizes it's entirely her responsibility. Our strategy was succeeding beyond expectations. We didn't need to actively pursue all of Blue Ridge's clients. The company was self-destructing through mismanagement. 3 months after my termination, I was back behind the wheel, delivering critical components to Riverside Distributors. Their primary assembly operation had experienced mechanical failure, and they required replacement parts before morning. Like previous emergencies I'd addressed, except now the vehicle I operated displayed my own name on the door. As I reversed toward Riverside's loading platform at 5:30 a.m., James himself awaited my arrival despite the early hour. "You're an absolute lifesaver, Marcus," he declared while accepting the documentation. "Our production supervisor indicates we can resume operations within 90 minutes now." I assisted with unloading, then accompanied James to his office for coffee. He appeared somewhat distracted, repeatedly checking his smartphone. "Everything proceeding normally?" I inquired. "Just awaiting verification on something," he explained while pouring additional coffee. "Should arrive momentarily." His phone signaled a notification. He reviewed the message, then smiled broadly. "It's confirmed. As of this morning, we've formally terminated our contract with Blue Ridge. You're now managing 100% of our shipping requirements." I'd anticipated this development. We'd been progressively assuming more of their business, but hearing official confirmation still felt profoundly significant. "I appreciate your confidence," I responded simply. "Trust is precisely why you earned it," James replied. "But you should recognize you're not unique in this decision. Eastern Supply severed ties with them yesterday. Piedmont Manufacturing 2 days prior. According to industry sources, Blue Ridge has lost approximately 85% of their Charlotte business within the past 8 weeks. During my return journey to our terminal, I passed Blue Ridge's facility. The yard appeared mostly vacant. A commercial real estate sign had materialized on the perimeter fence. Through office windows, I observed Alicia on the telephone, gesticulating frantically. I didn't experience the satisfaction I'd anticipated, just a quiet certainty that circumstances were resolving appropriately. We hadn't misappropriated anything. We'd simply constructed something superior, something founded on principles that had always defined this industry. Back at our terminal, Bennett greeted me in the break room. "Have you received updates?" he inquired regarding Blue Ridge's client exodus. "Yes." Bennett shook his head solemnly. "More significant than that, they're filing for bankruptcy protection, effective immediately." 8 months after my termination from Blue Ridge, I stood observing our fleet, now 18 vehicles strong, depart for the day's deliveries from Coleman, Vincent, and Bennett Transport's yard. Our modest terminal had expanded to include proper warehouse facilities and maintenance operations. We employed 47 people, most formerly with Blue Ridge. Blue Ridge Continental Shipping no longer existed. Following bankruptcy proceedings, their assets had been liquidated, their contracts dispersed among various competitors. We'd acquired 5 of their vehicles through auction, quality machines that had suffered from inadequate maintenance. Our mechanics had invested considerable time restoring them to proper operational standards. Alicia had relocated from Charlotte. According to industry sources, she'd accepted a position with a logistics corporation in Denver. The investment group that purchased Blue Ridge from Bennett had documented the entire venture as a substantial loss. Bennett joined me in the yard, supporting himself with a walking stick. At 76, he wasn't actively managing daily operations, but he appeared most mornings to share coffee with drivers and contribute his wisdom. "Never imagined returning to the shipping industry," he reflected, watching a freightliner depart carrying manufacturing equipment destined for Nashville. "Having second thoughts?" I asked. He laughed heartily. "Absolutely not. Best decision I've implemented in years." We returned inside, where Margaret was coordinating daily routes. Vincent was reviewing maintenance schedules with our lead mechanics. The facility resonated with purposeful activity. "You understand what makes this successful," Bennett observed, preparing another coffee. "It's not the vehicles or the contracts or even the financial resources. It's the people." His assessment was absolutely accurate. We'd established something valuable precisely because we prioritized the correct elements. That afternoon, I took an unusual personal day, drove to Lake Norman with Corinne, relaxed on the shore with fishing equipment, not particularly concerned whether we caught anything. "Content?" she asked straightforwardly. I considered her question, observing sunlight dancing across water. "Genuinely," I confirmed. "I've discovered that sometimes the extended journey isn't about traveling great distances. It's about finding your way back to what truly matters."